Okay. Let's see if I can get that set up. All right. So are you all able to see these slides okay? Yes.
Yep, perfect.
Okay, great. All right. So just again, assalamu alaikum, everybody. Happy to be here. So I was invited here today to talk about meditation practices in relation to Salah. And I always just kind of like to start with some positioning, just so you know a little bit more about who I am. Again, my name is Shani Banks. My pronouns are she and hers. I'm a Black Muslim woman, a mental health therapist, and a graduate student in clinical mental health counseling. I don't consider myself an expert by any means, about meditation, but, Islamic meditation is an integral part of my personal life and my work as a therapist. I'm an advocate of anti-oppressive mental health counseling, and then also, like was shared in the bio, bringing expressive arts and movement into my practice. I'm trained in trauma-sensitive yoga and obviously believe that Islamic spirituality has so much to offer, right, as far as holistic mental health care, which is why I founded Holistic Muslim Healing. So just to talk like very briefly, a quick like shameless plug, it's my organization and my future private practice, and I do Islamic meditations through Holistic Muslim Healing, provide a few art therapy activities through our newsletter, and then every weekend in Ramadan, we also have mental health check-ins and a few monthly webinars. All right. Okay. So I want to start off with a meditation. We're all, in this space together, and it's helpful before we start to kind of center ourselves through meditation. So we've all, experienced different things throughout our day up to this point, and, are all potentially carrying different levels of energy and different levels of activation. And as we come together today, we can think of ourselves as really creating a collective body in this space today. So we can actually center our collective body or come into harmony with one another through meditation. So I like to invite you to join me if you feel comfortable. I know many of you have your screens off, which is perfectly fine. If you like to, keep your screen off throughout this meditation, if that helps you feel more comfortable, I invite you to do so. And you might just take a minute here to find the comfortable position. If you're sitting down, that might be firmly planting your feet on the ground, maybe straightening your back. You might even choose to lay down here, just kind of finding what feels comfortable, finding where is a comfortable position to maybe rest your hands. You might even take a few movements with the shoulders, maybe rolling the neck a bit here, just kind of coming into your body a little bit. And when you're ready and you're feeling comfortable, I invite you to close your eyes. If closing your eyes feels safe and comfortable for you today, if not, you can always find a soft gaze, maybe gazing at something that brings you a sense of peace, a sense of calm. And just take a few seconds here with your eyes closed or with your soft gaze to just notice where your breath is landing in your body. So for some of us, this might be the first time today that we've really even thought about breathing. You might have a bit of a shallow breath. You might notice that you've been holding your breath, or you might already have a deep breath going on. Just notice where you're at. And I'd like to invite you to maybe start to bring in a little bit of a deeper breath, maybe taking a deep inhale in through the nose and expanding the stomach. And exhaling out through the nose and pulling the stomach in towards the spine. And we'll do another one like that, breathing in through the nose, expanding the stomach like a balloon, And exhaling out through the nose, pulling the stomach in towards the spine. You might see if you can maintain um, this pattern of breathing, this deep belly breathing, inhaling, expanding your stomach, and exhaling, pulling your stomach in. Just seeing what it feels like to breathe deeply here. Acknowledging that breath is evidence that we're supported by the power of divine life, that we're supported by Allah. So we're breathing deeply today, breathing in gratitude. And as you breathe, you might notice where your mind is at. Maybe noticing there are thoughts that have come up about things that have happened in the day thus far. Maybe something you have to do after this. Can you just notice that those thoughts are there? Not following them, but also not trying to stop them. Simply acknowledging that they're there. And coming back to your breath, breathing deeply. And as you breathe here, I invite you to maybe bring someone that you care about to mind. This might be one person, might be a group of friends, maybe your family. You can get even broader than that. Maybe it's an organization, group of people that you really care for, maybe a country full of people that you care for. Whatever it is, I like to invite you to hold that person or those group of people in the front of your mind and imagine that in your next inhale, you can take away all of the suffering or the pain that that person or those people experience. And on your next exhale, you can breathe out peace and comfort. On your inhale, breathing in or taking away the suffering. And on the exhale, releasing peace, releasing tranquility. A helpful image might be on your inhale, breathing in a black colored smoke, taking in that suffering, taking it away. And on your exhale, breathing out a white colored smoke, releasing peace. See if you can maintain this pattern of breathing here, allowing your breath to be a mechanism for peace, allowing peace to permeate over the person or the people that you love, allowing this to be a gathering of peace through our collective breath. Maybe even feeling peace around you, all of which come from Allah, the source of peace. Take a few more deep breaths here. When you're ready, I invite you to take the deepest inhale you've taken all day long. And on your exhale, sigh it out. You might begin to take a few gentle movements here, maybe with your fingers or toes, bringing some movement back into the body. Maybe allowing your breath to return to its normal pattern. If you chose to lie down and you'd like to sit back up, I invite you to maybe roll over to your favorite side and gently push yourself back up into a seated position. Everyone here, maybe opening your eyes gently and coming back into the space together. You might take a look around and just kind of ground yourself back into your environment again here. So I like to just kind of offer a moment to process here before we continue today's talk. Would anyone maybe like to share or reflect on how they're feeling or maybe what came up for them throughout the meditation? Of course, there's no need to, but I want to make sure I offer this space to process.
That felt very calming.
I'm glad.
I feel like I was a little bit high strung today. I feel a little bit better.
Yeah, glad to hear it. All right, well, we will keep going in the presentation. I'm glad that that was helpful, hopefully. All right, so we just centered our collective body and have all now experienced meditation together. So that was one form of meditation that, like I said, hopefully, did help us feel more relaxed and maybe even more spiritually elevated. But that's not the only way to meditate. And my main point of this presentation today is written in bold here, and it's that Salah actually is meditation. And so often we imagine that meditation really only looks like the practice that we just did together, which is a really beneficial and beautiful practice. But if we look at the actual definition of meditation, I've written it here, it says to think deeply or focus one's mind for a period of time in silence or with the aid of chanting for religious or spiritual purposes or as a method of relaxation. So, I'm sure if any of us were asked, right, like how to make Salah more meditative, we would probably know the right things to say, like have intention, know the meaning of your words, or something along those lines. But I really wanted to bring the definition here to highlight that Salah already is meditation, right? Like it perfectly fits this description. And when we're praying, we're, aiming to deeply focus on Allah's presence, sometimes in silence or other times, with recitation, depending on maybe the time of the day or the prayer. And then we're doing it for both religious and spiritual reasons. So Salah is prayer, right? But it's also meditation. And so this may require a bit of a paradigm shift in how we understand the practice of Salah. So when we look at it as meditation, we may begin to naturally associate characteristics to it that we otherwise really wouldn't associate to it naturally. So things like relaxation, things like centering or transcendence, and even compassion, all elements of meditation that are also elements of Salah when we begin to think of it as a form of meditation. So when we discuss today, just keep in mind that we're not really bringing meditation practices into Salah. We're actually learning to practice Salah as the meditation that it really already is. And so this doesn't mean that we don't continue to practice meditation in the way that we just did, or that one can replace the other. Of course, one doesn't replace the other, right? There are infinite types of meditations, and Salah is really the divine meditation that was ordained for us, which is simultaneously our prayer. All right. Okay, so really, again, what we're doing here is just trying to facilitate that paradigm shift in our approach to Salah. So I've included a few techniques here to help us really kind of reframe that approach. So the first is to create a soft environment for your Salah. So you can, for example, try praying in nature. It's a nice time right now to kind of get outside. Now that the weather is getting warmer, and then actually meditating outside or meditating in nature has a lot of empirically proven mental health benefits. So that's one way to go as far as creating that really soft, nurturing environment for Salah. And then another is if you are indoors, it's important that the space that you're in is clean. Dim lighting is often something that's preferred or used in meditation practices. You might try lighting incense, which, there is a lot of kind of spiritual significance to the smoke that's burned by incense. Some people say, that the smoke from Bakor removes negative spirits in your space, or you might, just simply be soothed by the smell of incense. Um, you can get yourself like a comfortable carpet or a comfortable prayer mat to pray to help further ground yourself in physical touch. And then focusing on physical touch also kind of brings us to the next point that I have here, which is sensing your body and noticing the sensations of your internal and then also your external self as you move through the prayer. So you might notice, for example, the feeling of your feet on the ground and like what that feels like to feel your feet connected to the ground. Maybe you feel the feeling of your body as it moves through the Salah. You might feel the rush of blood to your head and prostration, just kind of taking the time here to notice these sensations in your body as you physically move, both internally and then externally. The next kind of along with that again is breathing deeply. So you can use belly breathing, which is similar to what we just did in our practice today. And you can also use breath as representation, which is also very similar to what we did today. So for example, breathing in peace and breathing out peace into the space around you is one that I really like to use, or breathing in divine blessings and breathing out maybe the ayat that you're reciting. So the representation and breath that we just did in this practice is from a meditation style called Tonglen. And it focuses on compassion by taking in suffering and giving out peace. So that's a breath representation that's in an existing kind of meditation style, but you are always free to adapt your own, create your own, whatever feels good and whatever makes sense for you. And then lastly, I have prioritizing gentleness. Um, and I wanted to highlight this just because getting distracted is normal, right? And it will happen. And when it does happen, just know that you don't have to beat yourself up about it, but you also don't have to really attach yourself to those thoughts that come up or any distractions that come up in your Salah. So these are just techniques that, again, help us to experience Salah as the meditation that it already is, considering, reframing our practice and maybe unlearning Salah as a more industrial and transactional practice and beginning to see it really as a form of meditation. Okay. So the next thing that I just wanted to focus on in this kind of reframing our Salah is the idea of mindfulness. So Allah asks us to be mindful of Him all throughout the Quran. Allah gives us this reminder to be mindful. So in Tasawwuf or like Islamic spirituality, we understand mindfulness, as being in line with muraqabah, which I'm not going to go into today because that's just not my area of expertise. But I do want to introduce mindfulness as defined by John Kabat-Zinn, who is the pioneer of mindfulness meditation in Western psychology. And I think that there's a lot to learn from this perspective as well. He describes mindfulness as, awareness that arises through paying attention on purpose in the present moment, non-judgmentally. So John Kabat-Zinn studied with Buddhist monks throughout his life before formalizing the practice of mindfulness-based stress reduction, or MBSR, which is an empirically proven technique. And you can still practice with him today if you want. He's at the University of Massachusetts, and he does this regularly. But I just wanted to point out three elements of this definition: awareness, being in the present moment, and then non-judgment. These are things that I think we're all like familiar with when it comes to mindfulness and meditation. But these are all elements that I think can be useful in incorporating into our Salah as we continue to think about Salah as meditation. So I will go into those a little bit. The first element is awareness. So many people use this metaphor of awareness being like a flashlight that you can illuminate whatever you focus it on. So in Salah, we can develop awareness of Allah by firstly, of course, asking Allah to make us aware of his presence or make us aware of him, and coming to know and feel his presence by developing, that personal experience or personal relationship, if you prefer to call it a relationship, with Allah. And really being able to follow the fitra that leads us to him, just really inherently. The second element is presence, which is often described as being here now. Like you might see like that or hear that, like be here now. So this is about becoming familiar with and coming into contact with your internal and external environment. A lot of us also understand this as like having khushu', right? Like being present, being there, being in the moment while you're praying. So having a pulse on what's happening inside and outside of you emotionally, physically, mentally, and then spiritually as you pray as well. And so this honestly can be very difficult to master. Being present is really hard to do, especially like in the times that we're living in right now. And I think a good place to start on this journey of being present, or at least trying to be more present, is often through being more physically present. So using your five senses to do what's called grounding into your environment. So just using touch to just notice, like the example I gave before, like feeling the sensation of the ground under your feet, feeling your body as it moves. Maybe there's a smell that you smell while you're praying. Maybe someone's cooking. Maybe you hear other people talking while you're praying. That doesn't have to be a distraction, right? It can all be all of your senses working together to really root you into your environment, to ground you into your environment. One caveat here is if you experience disassociation, which is this feeling of being detached from reality, or some people describe it as this feeling of floating outside of their body and almost as if they're hovering above their own bodies. So this is a common kind of a maladaptive coping mechanism for individuals. Uh, Often individuals who have experienced childhood abuse might experience disassociation. So grounding is going to be difficult, but that doesn't mean that you can't get there, but you may want to consider working with a mental health professional. So if you experience disassociation, or if you've experienced it in the past, presence is going to be something that's going to be a little bit more challenging. So making sure that you're getting help with that is obviously going to be helpful with mindfulness, but that's just going to generally be helpful for your mental health and your well-being as you continue throughout this journey. And then lastly, we have non-judgment, which is, not being attached to the mistakes that you make. Common humanity that I've written here is one of the three elements of self-compassion and self-compassion research. And it refers to knowing, that you're a human being, and that every human on earth will make mistakes, and then that's okay. And so as Muslims, we'll want to remember that, but we'll also want to remember in hand with that, Allah's, infinite mercy and love for us. So a mantra that I really like that helps me when I'm feeling judgmental or self-critical towards myself is, as long as I'm on this earth, I will make mistakes. And as long as I make mistakes, I can ask for Allah's forgiveness and return to my rightful place in his loving presence. And that can be something that you say to yourself. It's something that I say to myself and can really help reorient me and help ground me back into Allah's mercy and ground me back into common humanity. And then the last thing I just wanted to share about mindfulness is that, you know, mindfulness is very helpful in Salah, but can only be helpful in Salah if it starts, outside of Salah. So practicing elements of mindfulness, practicing awareness and presence and non-judgment in your daily life will make it more accessible to you when it is Salah time. So we're almost done here. I just wanted to do a quick overview of what we talked about. So Salah is a form of meditation, and it is also our obligatory prayer. It takes, reframing our approach to Salah for some of us to be able to access it as meditation. We talked about being able to create the environment, being able to sense our bodies, to breathe deeply. We talked about prioritizing gentleness towards ourselves. And in doing this, or practicing these things, you might just start off with one of these things. You might just start off with like trying to create a soft environment and just seeing how that feels. Don't feel pressured to do everything at once, in line with practicing gentleness. Like maybe we just do one thing and see how that feels. Um, and then the next thing that we discussed is that Allah asks us to be mindful, right? And we reviewed the elements of mindfulness, which are awareness, presence, and non-judgment. And lastly, we noted that in order to practice mindfulness in Salah, we need to practice mindfulness in other areas of our lives. So that might be mindful eating, or mindful walking, or mindful conversation. There are so many different areas of our lives where awareness and presence and non-judgment can all be useful. And that is all that I have today as far as slides. So thanks for listening. I'm happy to answer any questions or hear your thoughts and maybe open it up into more of a discussion.
Well, thank you so much, Sister Shani. I learned so much. I know it's only been 30 minutes, but really, I always did think of Salat as meditation, but the way you sort of framed it for us is such a different approach that I typically have. So thank you so much. We do have a ton of questions. So let's get started. Marcia asks, how do we detach ourselves from distracting thoughts mid-meditation?
Yeah, I think that distracting thoughts are super common during meditation. I always say that like a wandering mind is kind of part of meditation because it is. It's almost impossible to not be distracted or to not have thoughts come up. But the important thing is, like I said before, is just trying not to follow those thoughts. So if there's a thought that comes up about like, okay, I need to go like clean up after this or whatever, there's like something on the to-do list that pops up in your brain, not following it down that road, but at the same time, not trying to stop it either. So one thing that we know from research is that like thought stopping isn't a thing that works. So for example, if I say right now, like everybody do not think of a brown bear, whatever you do, don't think of a brown bear. Like we're all thinking of brown bears now. And so not trying to stop it is one actually really useful way in ironically stopping that thought, but at the same time not following it. So noticing is kind of what the middle path is there, and just noticing that you're having a thought. So that thought might come up and you might say, okay, I'm thinking about the fact that I need to clean up afterwards. And that's it. You kind of just acknowledge that that thought is there. And then with practice of doing that, you'll begin to notice that they don't have as much control over you when you just kind of acknowledge that the thought is there. And some people might use the metaphor of like, you acknowledge a thought like a passing cloud and you just kind of notice that it's there and kind of let it go. Another one that I like or is helpful for me in thinking about this is almost a metaphor of like a stranger on the street. It's like you just acknowledge that there's a stranger there and you continue walking, you continue on your path. But the fact that a stranger is there isn't going to stop you on your journey. You're not going to start following them or want to come along with them. It's just this act of noticing and acknowledging and kind of continuing on the way that you're going. It does take practice though. It's definitely not easy, but that's one way definitely of kind of working with distracting thoughts. I hope that answered the question.
All right, Sister Zainab asks, do you have any tips on how to unlearn Salat as an industrial/daily task and to begin thinking of it as a meditation?
Mm. Yeah, I think that a lot of it really does come to how we approach it at the beginning, like how do we start it? And so you'll hear people talk about like being very intentional and how they do their wudu, and it being almost like a relaxing or rejuvenating thing. And so it can become very task-like because it is something that we have to do throughout our day. But I think that potentially approaching it and really allowing yourself to reframe it in this way, allowing yourself to take control of it as it is something that you have to do, but it's yours. It's your personal relationship, and it can look like however you like it to look like. If today it's going to look like you're praying outside and you're spending time in nature and that's how you're doing it, then that's how you're doing it. So maybe finding ways of like taking control over it, doing things that are going to bring you joy in your Salah. It is a thing that can be joyful. It is a thing that can be relaxing and doesn't have to feel industrial and doesn't have to feel like a task. So some of those things that I mentioned as well, maybe like burning some incense, maybe lighting a candle, even slowing down through those actions can help it feel less task-like when you have to take your time to set it up in that way.
Sahar asks, could you please write the mantra in the chat? Very beautiful. I
Sure.
saw that earlier. I wish I would have grabbed that for her.
Sure. Should I write it or I can? Yeah,
Go
it's
speak it and I can type it for you.
yeah. So it's as long as I'm in this world, I will make mistakes. And as long as I make mistakes, I can ask Allah for forgiveness and return to my rightful place in His loving presence.
Thank you so much. Our next one is, do you have any advice on getting into the habit of making additional salats outside of the daily 5?
Mm. Well, my area of expertise is mental health, so I don't want to veer too far into kind of things that are outside of my area of expertise, but I will share as far as building habits. One thing that we might do in therapy is really just start small, adding on to something that you're already doing. So for example, if you're already praying like the daily 5, you might start small with just like doing a little bit of dhikr after each one. And if you're already doing that, you might go a step further and do one more small thing after that. So it's really just kind of about, as far as building habits, it's about adding slowly, adding small things rather onto existing things that you're already doing and seeing how you can build up from there. Not really making any kind of big drastic changes, but you might just kind of start small and see where you can enter things. And maybe for you that builds up to, making additional prayers. Maybe right now it just looks like making dhikr. Maybe right now it just looks like kind of elongating your dua, or maybe elongating the time that you're spending just on the one obligatory prayer. So that would be the advice that I think I could give within my area of expertise.
Our next one is, how do we use dhikr for meditation? Chanting is used in a lot of Eastern meditation practices. Is it just a grounding mechanism?
Hmm. Can you explain a little bit more? I want to be able to answer.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, like, because like in a lot of Eastern practices, they use chanting in their meditation. I'm just wondering, like, how do we incorporate dhikr into our mindfulness practice? Like, do we do it before Salah to prepare us or after Salah? And what does it do exactly? Like, why do so many different meditation traditions use chanting?
Mhm. Yeah, so I think it can be, I mean, part of it is like sensory, right? Part of it is like creating almost this there's like people who like might believe in like energies about it. So there's like this idea that maybe certain words or certain phrases and chantings create energy. And so part of it is like maybe creating an energetic environment. So that is definitely part of what some chanting is for some folks. For others, it could just be like the repetition and the rhythm. There's a lot of research that shows that like moving in this way of like repetition and rhythm really regulates our bodies and regulates our nervous systems. So that's part of it as well. And I think that dhikr, as far as meditation goes, can also be like a form of meditation. I think that you can apply a lot of these same things, a lot of the same, you can breathe with dhikr. There's like breathing techniques where you might, for example, you do the dhikr of Allahu, breathing in on Allah and exhaling on Hu. And that is almost like you can begin to practice like uh, centering your body on the name of Allah or centering your body on other names of Allah, whatever is kind of coming to you or whatever is relevant for you. So being able to do that is one. Another that I also really like is called spiritual Quranic emotional freedom technique, which I did a little bit about as part of holistic Muslim healing, but it's essentially tapping, which if you're familiar with tapping, it's the activation of like different meridian points on your body, which are lines of energy that go throughout your body. And so you can actually activate those meridian points. One way is through acupuncture, which is like through needles, obviously. And then another way is through acupressure, which is through tapping on those points. And so there's been studies done in Indonesia where they activated these points through tapping and pressure and have used dhikr and have used recitation in tandem with those things to kind of bring healing. And they've seen like crazy, like ridiculous results of people who have been in psychiatric hospitals, for one example, or even just like a layperson who's needing like stress reduction. So yeah, I feel like I was rambling a bit, but definitely a lot of different ways that you can use dhikr in meditation.
Do you have like a easy, like, what are some easy pressure points that we can do the tapping on?
Honestly, yeah, honestly, the tapping points are really easy to learn. I could go through them really quickly. So you would kind of first start off by there's tapping on the karate chop point is what it's called, but it's this fleshy part of your hand that like if you were to karate chop something, that's the part that it would hit, right? And so you would start off with maybe 4 fingers and you'd like tap this point about 5 to 7 times just to kind of activate it. And you would just acknowledge whatever the issue is. So, for example, it's stress. You might say, like, although I'm feeling stress right now, I deeply and completely accept myself, or I deeply and completely accept the way that Allah has made me. So that would be the first pressure point. It's this karate chop point. The second point is at the very top of your head. And you could use again 4 fingers to tap this point. And then the third point after that is this eyebrow point. It's right at the beginning of your eyebrow. You can use 2 fingers to tap it. It's again 5 to 7 times. Each point is 5 to 7 times. Your next spot is on the side of your eye, 5 to 7 times. Then it's underneath your eye right here, almost on that bone, 5 to 7 times. Underneath your nose, 5 to 7 times. Your chin point, 5 to 7 times. And then your chest, you could actually make a fist right in the center of your chest, 5 to 7 times. And then the last one is called your underarm, but it's kind of about 4 inches underneath your underarm, I would say, kind of on the side of your torso. And you use 4 fingers to tap that 5 to 7 times. And so that's actually one round of emotional freedom technique or tapping. And once you learn it, you can do it really, really quickly and you can add dhikr with it and really make it your own. But yeah, I hope that was helpful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, so our next one is, what does a mindfulness walk look like?
Hmm. Yeah, a mindfulness walk can really just kind of be walking around. You can make it more physical. You can make it walking and really again using your five senses, noticing what every step looks like. Some people do it without shoes on, and really ground into the literal ground with their feet and maybe feel what that feels like. You might touch a few plants along the way during your walk. You might just notice what you see around you, what you hear around you, maybe what you smell, taking time to really be mindful, to use all your five senses and to be present. Or you could make it, like example, a dhikr walk. A dhikr walk is something that's really popular. I've seen like people doing that a lot recently. And that could just be like looking around and just realizing what names of Allah are becoming apparent to you, what signs are becoming apparent to you as you walk, and allowing yourself to kind of reflect and to chew on that a little bit as you walk and as you look around you. So just kind of being open.
Our next one is, what are some things I could do on a daily basis that can make mindfulness easier when praying?
Yeah. So like I mentioned, just kind of doing those small things to try to bring it into your life as much as you can, whether that is like doing a mindful walk or mindful eating or something that could be helpful. You might even take a few minutes, like if you have them before Salah to just kind of sit and just notice what's happening for you. Like maybe just take a few deep breaths before you start and notice like, okay, today has been really hectic, or like, you know what, I'm actually really hot. Just taking the time to like notice what's actually going on for you right now. Taking time to be mindful. So often we're just moving so quickly, doing things and not really giving ourselves time to really be and time to take care of ourselves and be present with ourselves. And the truth is that, being present with ourselves and taking care of ourselves is not really an option, but we treat it like it's an option, but we have to do it. Like we have to take care of ourselves and make sure that we're okay. And the part of that practice, bringing it into your life will help you bring it into your salah.
I have one more question for you, and I think this is a really good one. How do we practice mindful salah during jama'ah? It feels very achievable for prayers done in private, but there's so much distraction when we pray jama'ah.
Yes, that is very true. So one thing that I like to do if I'm in a very kind of like just distracting place is kind of bring that distraction into my present moment, because it's already there, right? It's already part of your present moment. So if you're praying and there's like a kid screaming and like running around the masjid while you're praying, that's a part of your present moment. Like in the same way that a thought will come up to you and you might be thinking like, oh, I need to do the laundry. And you might acknowledge like, I'm thinking about the fact that I need to do the laundry. Okay, I'm allowing myself to move on now. You can do the same thing with that screaming child and be like, yeah, I hear a child screaming in the background, and just kind of acknowledge that that's there and notice that that's there. Not trying to stop it, not trying to block it out, right? But also not following it up with, oh my God, would they just be quiet? Like I can't focus. Just acknowledging, noticing that it's there, and then seeing if you can come back to presence after noticing and just acknowledging and allowing yourself to do that. Not easy though.
All right. Well, I guess that's all we had. Thank you so much, Sister Shani. Before we wrap up, do you mind just sharing? I was taking a look at your website and I saw you had weekly meditation sessions. Do you mind just sharing a little bit about that with us?
Sure. Yeah, so my weekly meditation sessions, they're every Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern time. So maybe about 15 minutes, very similar to what we did today. Maybe we might add a little bit of dhikr onto the end. And they're on Zoom. I'd love for you to join me if you can every Friday. Thanks for sharing that.
You're very welcome. So I linked her link tree in the chat if you guys want to take a look. That's all the time we had today. Thank you so much for joining us, Sister Shani. I learned so much, and I'm sure everyone else did as well. Um, And we'll wrap up. Thanks, guys.
Let me just say before we go, Mohebban is selling stickers again this Ramadan for our Ramadan fundraising. They are $3.50 and they're designed by a local artist. We're calling them "In the Stars Prostrate" after the ayah in Surah Rahman because it's like a cosmic prayer rug. I feel like very cute. So if you guys want these, there's a link to order them on our Instagram page, and you'd be supporting our cause so that we can keep providing you guys with quality programming. Thank you for coming, everyone. Thank you, Shani, again.
Thanks for inviting me. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Assalamualaikum, guys.
Walaikum assalam.